Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
Welcome to Your Town Matters. I'm Natalie Sturgeon. My guest today is the mayor of the town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks for having me. It might be my second to last time.
Yeah, I'm sad to see you go. I feel like we've built a good rapport over that short time that we've been doing this, but Vicky is probably planning to do the last one, so hopefully we'll see you here on the couch again.
So our last time doing this.
Yeah, okay. I think so, yeah.
Should be a 4-hour feature maybe then,
I mean, there's so much to talk about. All right, so I want to start with the RCMP letter. Why did council want to send that letter?
Well, I think what it comes down to is that you're seeing municipalities all across Canada facing challenges with RCMP. Although it has improved greatly in our community over especially the last year, we've had concerns over RCMP presence, some of the priorities, but in particular, it's a significant budgetary amount for all municipalities that are in these contracts. And if you're the one paying the bill, I think you should have a voice at the table is what it ultimately comes down to. So that's why we felt the need to say that municipalities should have a voice at the table when it comes to negotiations with the RCMP.
So what does meaningfully involved in the bargaining process mean? Yeah,
so it doesn't mean that necessarily someone from St. Andrews sits at the bargaining table, but you've got associations, whether it be provincially, UMNB, or even the Canadian Federation of Municipalities, having someone at the table that represents municipal interests, both big communities, cities, but also smaller communities like St. Andrews. I think it's important, and right now they say that there's a liaison, but as far as I know, there's never been a back and forth over what St. Andrews wants or what New Brunswick municipalities want. So that's really what it is. It's about having a process in place where municipal governments that, again, are paying the bill have a voice at the table when we're negotiating an agreement that ultimately is going to cost us more.
You mentioned in a scrum that we did that you feel like the communication from the RCMP has been better. You're seeing more of them in the community. Talk to me a little bit about that. What are you actually noticing in terms of the RCMP?
Well, even yesterday I was at the bike rodeo at Vincent Massey Elementary School, and there was 3 RCMP there interacting with the kids. I don't know if I've ever seen 3 RCMP at the elementary school interacting with the kids, especially when it's a good proactive measure. And just in general, I resort back to a weekend just last month where I noticed I unfortunately had a fire call that I had to respond to at my workplace, and an RCMP officer stopped by just to make sure there was nothing suspicious. And then the next night they basically had somebody, they had a roadblock outside. There was a curling bonspiel happening where people were having a good time. They're making sure no one was drinking and driving and reminding them that they are out in the community. And then the following morning there was school, and basically there was an RCMP officer there making sure nobody went by the buses. So like they seem like their engagement in the community is a lot more. You see the cruisers a lot more, and they've made some arrests over the last year of repeat offenders, which sometimes has got to be very discouraging for them, but they never gave up. And there is a number of people in this region now that are serving sentences finally, and that's why we're seeing a reduction in property theft and things like that. Who would have thought? You get some of these people behind bars and crime in the area slows down. That to me is common sense, and it's good to see that their efforts are paying off. So I actually was very vocal, I would say my first year as mayor, really vocal about how I did not think the presence was what it has to, but I have to acknowledge that over the last year it's greatly improved. Is this something that it's checked the box, it's the end of the line? No, but it's something that we should continue to work on. And to your question about communication, we meet more regularly with the RCMP than we ever have. And that's not just St. Andrews. I can tell you that if you talk to Fundy Shores and New Community, they will tell you the same thing. The last year, they've noticed an improvement as well.
And so what were the priorities that council set for the RCMP for the upcoming year?
So they're fairly consistent. The ones that really, when you get down to the heart of it, is crime reduction. It's about those repeat offenders, continuing to focus on them. It's about traffic, and particularly speeding. There's a lot of times in the summer, and we're right around the corner from that, when really it's 3 or 4 individuals that for whatever reason just decide to loop around our community. We all know them. People's windows are open. They hear the mufflers on some of them, and they're just speeding around our community. So focusing on them was definitely an important one. And then the other one, of course, is you've got to be aware of it in our community, is community presence, but also drugs, right? Like if you look at some of the drugs that are now coming into New Brunswick, we're not an island. They are coming in regularly. And a lot of these drugs now are having fatal consequences, as we know. So continuing all those those priorities, it almost carried over from the year before. And even though I won't be on council, I bet you if you look at next year's priorities, you're going to hear those same conversations. They're pretty consistent.
Okay, I want to switch to council composition. Explain to the folks at home sort of what's happening with council in terms of the number of seats that you would like to see.
Yeah, so if you looked at the town of St. Andrews, before municipal reform, we had 6 councillors plus a mayor. Municipal reform happened. Shamcook and Bayside joined us. We had a facilitator at the time that told us that they're going to leave this, the 6 councillors in place and the mayor, but we're going to be adding 3 more. So we have 9 councillors plus a mayor, which puts us to almost a councillor per 300 in the population, which is, I think, almost like twice as low as the average should be, even more maybe. I think it's like, so what I'm getting at is we're significantly over-indexed for the amount of councillors we have per population, and that is costing the taxpayer money. So the proposal that was brought forward from staff, also with a little bit of feedback from different members of council, and they did reach out to the Department of Local Government as well, is to go back to that 6 councillors plus a mayor. But because municipal reform is so new, it's important to make sure that Shamcook and Bayside has representation. So there will continue to be a Shamcook councillor from that ward, a Bayside councillor from that ward, and then 4 from St. Andrews is the proposal. And if you look at the tax base and the population base, it does mirror that. And then the mayor can be from any of the wards. It's almost like at large. The mayor could be from Shamcook, Bayside, or the old St. Andrews ward. And I still think that one of the things this council should circle is, what do you call that old St. Andrews ward? Because it's always awkward every time it comes back. You can't call it urban because we're not really a big city. And so I kind of say that the older traditional old St. Andrews. So.
And so you talked about not calling it urban, but that's kind of how they're categorizing it. But why is it important, I guess, to keep that representation for Bayside, Shamcook, and the ward?
The first thing that comes out when you have a new community, and it's no different than the greater regional municipality of like Halifax, is they say it takes about 10 years really to implement. I've actually heard a lot of people say it takes a generation, and there's a lot of truth to that. So I think when you have a lot of issues that are still being discussed, like right now we're talking about zoning finally, you want to make sure that when you're around that table that someone that is from Bayside is at that table, that really understands what their neighbors' needs are. And it's so fresh too. It's important for Bayside to still have some of its identity, obviously. There's some things that you want in identity as a greater community, but there's some things that make Shamcook, Bayside, and the old St. Andrews unique. Kind of a bylaw that applies to one will not apply in the other. So to have that equal representation, I think it makes us stronger. But the big thing is when this election happens is to make sure that the representatives that come to the table want to be that voice for their ward, but also want to grow the greater community and see the greater community thrive.
And I wondered, people may think, oh, there's going to be less people around the table, I won't be as effectively represented. How would you respond to that, maybe? You would have,
I don't really agree with that because there's less people at the table. So if you're looking at kind of, let's go right to it, Shamcook Bayside. If you look at the way it is right now, they have 6 people that are from the old St. Andrews that when they make a comment, there's only 1 from Bayside. There's 6 people from the old ward of St. Andrews, plus the mayor is from the old St. Andrews. So you got 7. Where we're going to be going to is now there's 2 and 4. It's a difference of 2. If one person, decides that, you know what, that makes sense for my ward or for their ward, I'm going to vote that way, it's a lot closer. It's a lot easier to actually get support. And when you have 6 people at the table, if you want to engage in meaningful debate, and it's important to do, when you have 9 people and everyone weighs in for 3 minutes plus the mayor, like it's easily over 30 minutes on one motion. Having 6 people allows you to slow it down and have more meaningful conversations and maybe somewhat sell what you're trying to get across to council or convince. So if anything, I think it's a better opportunity. I obviously have been part of a council of 6 and 9. I thought debate was healthier with 6 just because you have difference of opinion, you want that, but 9, it's sometimes it can be difficult to get consensus. We've done a pretty good job, I'll say, but it definitely not everyone's going to agree. It's certainly a little bit harder to row together towards a direction, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so I want to stick with municipal politics in general. Yesterday, the province released some details, not very many, about how it's going to fund municipalities in the next several years, but it also it froze property assessment. What did you make of those two things kind of happening back to back?
Yeah, I've been following along. I kind of see what the province is trying to do, and I kind of see what UMNB, the Union Municipalities, their letter, as well as the Francophone Association, they sent back a pretty strong letter, not liking it because they weren't engaged in the process and they were supposed to be a partner. So I guess to jump into it, the province has froze the property assessments for a year. That doesn't mean they froze your property taxes. So there's 2 players at play when it comes to municipal property taxes. The province basically sets the assessment, what they say your house is worth, and the municipality sets the mill rate, so the tax rate. So even though, across the province, your assessment might be the same, your mill rate could be adjusted and you still could pay more. So as much as I can understand why municipalities are upset because there was no engagement on it, I look at what assessments are in our community. And this is me on my own. We haven't had a chance to talk about it as council as of the time of this filming. But let's be real. The amount of assessments that have gone up in our community, I think we've been hit harder than a lot of them. We've been hit for quite a few years now. Something's got to give. And I understand that the assessments, when you go to sell your house, is it worth that? Yes, it is. In almost every case, I can't argue that you see homes in this community selling more than assessment. But if you're someone that wants to stay in this community and stay in your home, these assessments going up and up and up and up, they're hurting you. And we've been lowering the mill rate. Not every municipality has. We've been lowering the mill rate, but I can tell you myself, I'm paying more and more every year. And the other thing on the freezing of the property tax is there's a spike protector. So you can only pay 10% more property tax per year. I can already tell you for the next 2-3 years, my property tax is supposed to go up another 10%. So even though they froze the assessment, I still have to catch up to the 50% increase I saw over the last couple of years. So I'm going to still see more. So how that calculates to the municipality, I think even though assessments are froze, I think you're still going to see a bigger assessment base for the town of St. Andrews. Well,
and there was some suggestion that perhaps municipalities could take advantage of new development or renovation. But you and I have talked a lot about how hard it is to develop in more rural areas, including St. Andrews and Charlotte County. Do you worry about that? Even in Dieppe, though, I think it's only 2.5% is what is going to offset. Do you worry about there not being enough development to give you a kind of stable ground?
Yes and no. And I'm not trying to dodge the question. It's just that in St. Andrews, we had over 3% growth last year. So we actually were able to, it doesn't mean everybody, but we were able to actually freeze the tax rate. So most people, in theory, shouldn't have seen an increase because we had so much new construction. That's why we lowered it so much. But, the truth is out about the Housing Accelerator Fund. It's a national billion-dollar fund that completely ignored this region. So we're relying on new growth, new builds. Other levels of government haven't given this region the attention that other regions have got across New Brunswick, and certainly not that others have got across Canada. Municipalities, for the most part, with private developers, have been the reason why you're seeing the growth. That's what we saw in St. Andrews. You're seeing, Charlie Bourgeois' development on the corner of Mowat Drive and Bar Road. Another one's going up there. That is helping us grow our tax rate. Obviously, Compass Housing, that is helping us grow our tax rate. And there's multiple projects like that. But I will say the municipality, I can't guarantee what future councils are going to do. but there's only so much money that a small municipality can throw to fuel housing. You need the other levels of government there. So if we're talking long term, yes, I'd be worried about new development being the answer. Right now, I think when you look at real estate in St. Andrews, it's doing so well because the supply is low. It doesn't necessarily mean that new builds are going to be here for the future for the long term.
Well, I guess it's hard to ask you future questions because
I'll try.
You're not going to be around. One of the other things that came up from the Union of Municipalities is that during the Gallant government, 41 communities did end up having to raise their tax rate from a similar property assessment freeze. I mean, you've been lowering it, so people have been sort of noticing that. But if you're not getting the money that you need for 1 year, are you not going to face a bit of a punch in the face in years coming up?
Potentially. And this is a 1 year freeze. This doesn't tell us where we're going. I know there's some hints there. I've heard about, tax reform. The sneak peeks I've got of it probably aren't going to do anything for St. Andrews. I could be wrong, but what I've heard so far isn't going to be a game changer. We still got aging infrastructure and new services that have been unloaded by the provincial government to the municipality that we didn't have to pay for before. We still have all that hitting St. Andrews. So if property tax is the only answer we have for aging infrastructure, plus these new services, then naturally, unfortunately, people have to pay more. And then you get into inflation. Your taxes staying the same, pretty unlikely for the long term until we figure out a proper fiscal reform that really allows municipalities to have multiple streams of revenue, so we're not relying on property tax to pretty much pay for everything that you see in a municipality. And in fairness to municipalities, I'm exiting, but you're seeing municipalities all across this province taking more responsibilities for other governments. They're getting into, obviously, if you look at doctors, the recruitment, but also paying for wellness centers. You're looking at them getting into daycares. Like, you're looking at things that traditionally municipalities never did, but the other levels of government haven't been providing it for municipalities. So it's everybody's looking at everybody, and when you're a leader, you don't want to just point fingers and say that's the excuse. You want to do something about it. So it'll be really interesting to see for sure what the future brings. It's a challenge, and I don't think we have the answer just because of a 1 year assessment freeze, even though I will acknowledge at least the province is saying that it's kind of out of control right now. They are acknowledging there is a challenge, but the real question is, after this freeze, what comes next?
Doesn't this make you want to stay and continue this fight?
It does. It's the truth is, and there's about 4 files that in my head I want to see. I want to stay till the end. But the truth is, whether I go this year, next year, 20 years from now, there's always going to be something else that you want to improve your community. So, but you are right. It's tough because you're passionate about it. You're still engaged in it. And you still care about your community. So, it's going to be tough not to. But going to be like everybody else and do the best to support our municipal council going forward.
I want to touch on a couple things. The wharf. So Chris said that the Chief Administrative Officer, Chris Spears, said that the renderings are almost finished. You expect some sort of tendering process to start soon. What can folks expect to see in the next couple months? Yeah,
so I was really hoping it was out now. There was a bit of a delay during the consultation process. There's a couple things going right now. There was First Nations consultation. A couple questions have come out of that. And as well, Transport Canada is taking expressions on the remediation in particular of the wharf. So there's a couple things that have slowed it down. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just has. But what you're going to see is you're going to see it go out to tender. You're going to see hopefully multiple companies bid on it. And we have an engineered assessment. The question, you got all these global issues going on right now around tariffs and all these other challenges around supply. The question is what does that come back at, really? That's what the community can expect. And council's going to have a tough decision based on what that is. If it comes back in under budget, great. Or on budget, great. If it comes in over budget, council's going to have a really tough conversation because this funding is expected to basically expire at the end of this year. They've kind of alluded that there's no guarantee of extension. Now, we still have a federal Liberal government. Maybe that will bode well for this particular process. But it's a risk, right? Like, there's no guarantee. So they're going to have a tough conversation when they do get that amount of it's over, what they do. There is other solutions in place that they can look at. It could be just as simple as do nothing and just repair the wharf, keeping in mind you won't have the government support, and it'll probably be an ongoing challenge. but it is something that they'll have to weigh out, and there's no guarantees.
I want to end on the summer season. This is going to be a different one, I think. What are your expectations for summer tourism season?
I could be completely wrong. I'm expecting a really, really good tourism season for St. Andrews. It was the kind of the key learning we all had during COVID. The provincial borders were closed. St. Andrews normally gets about 50% of its visitors outside of the province. So you got to think it was going to be a really bad year. And what we realized is that it was almost very similar to a normal year. So with that learning and knowing that, people are making the decision not to cross the border, the numbers back it up. There's a lot of people that did go over March break, but they had already paid and pre-booked those trips. The border crossings continue to decrease. So what I think you're going to see is a lot of Canadians maybe even have staycations within New Brunswick. When COVID happened, we had a lot of northern New Brunswick people come south, and we had more French-speaking people than when the borders were open. But what you're going to see is hopefully people from Nova Scotia discover New Brunswick, and New Brunswickers to discover Nova Scotia, people to make that cross-Canada trip. And then a lot of our visitors are from New England area, and a lot of the New England area residents don't necessarily support decisions and by their federal government right now. So hopefully we continue to see Americans come here. They are welcome here. The issues we have as country go a lot, our history way outweighs the issues we have. When it's a politician or a handful of politicians, it doesn't speak for an entire country. And I can't wait to see Americans here. We've had a long-standing relationship with them. In fact, a lot of our original residents that settled here outside of the Beskoto-Magadi, they basically migrated up from the United States. So we've got a long history. They're friends, they're neighbors, they're family. So I'm really anticipating a busier than normal summer. And the only thing I'm a little bit cautious of is last summer, it seemed like it was sunny every single weekend, which is good. Sun's out. Means people are enjoying walking downtown St. Andrews, visiting attractions. But the chances of being that sunny haven't been good. And based on the spring so far, hopefully we're getting it out of the way. It's been raining nonstop, it seems like, for the last month and a half. It's been a lot of rain. So that's a little bit of a scare, though, is last year we had perfect weather.
Right, April showers bring May flowers, I guess, hopefully, if the adage is true. When the Premier talked earlier in her press conferences, she talked about this uncertainty that mainly Canadians are feeling, but also businesses. Are you hearing any concerns from local businesses about the trade war?
Not. I shouldn't say that we're not hearing any, but if you look at suppliers and some of the things they purchase, they've made adjustments. A lot of them have made the decision to buy Canadian products, which some of these decisions aren't going to be just this political term. Some businesses have switched suppliers and they're probably going to stay with them after. But I think everybody's really optimistic we're going to have a great year. I know that everyone's looking for people that might be worried. And whenever there's friction in the world, there is reason to be concerned. But I really think that if you look at the business, so you look at our waterfront, there's all these new businesses that have opened up. Some of them, I don't know if you've been in yet, but they're fantastic. Like one just opened this week. I think if you look at downtown St. Andrews, I think everyone's cautiously optimistic that it's going to be a great year. So overall, I know there is concerns, but I'm hoping that it isn't tourism. If you look at industries like aquaculture, they're really the ones that are feeling it more now than ever. But hopefully tourism is one of those ones that thrives, at least for St. Andrews, and of course neighbors like Shediac and areas across the province.
I'm going to put you on the spot now.
Oh, I love it.
I'm going to ask you your top 5. If you could build a tourism guide for St. Andrews, what would be your top 5 spots? And Kingsbrae can't be on it.
I was going to say Kingsbrae Garden. That's a good one. I don't want to get anyone upset, but if you look at St. Andrews, whale watching, it's iconic to St. Andrews. You look at that whale tail. The wharf obviously is going to get its upgrade. Thinking of whale watching, that's got to be something that you do. And the first time I ever saw a whale, it just takes your breath away. Minister's Island is such a unique attraction, driving across the ocean floor. It's incredible. We've got one of the best golf courses in Canada in our backyard. I don't think we talk enough about that golf course. And then, if you look at the shops and restaurants downtown, just walking that, even getting an ice cream and going down the wharf, such a unique experience. And of course, I'll throw out some love to the Algonquin Resort as a place to stay. And I'm going to throw an extra one in there, Huntsman. I could go all day to have an aquarium like that in such a small community. Really, I've said it before, but when you look at other places across the world and look at things to do and places to see, this little town stacks up to any of them. And of course, I'm not even talking about the chefs we have in this community. So I could go all day.
Yeah, I mean, CBC named us one of the top 10 places in Canada to visit. How do, since you're such a vibrant summer destination spot, what advice would you give other municipalities who are trying to market themselves as a place to come and visit this summer?
Well, I think it really starts with your residents. Like St. Andrews, when you get into these contests, we're not selected for one business. We're not selected for one individual. It's because everybody in our community is almost a tour guide. So really, it's about embracing what you are, tourism, but also having a strategy. I'll give you an example. Like ATVs, I love them. I grew up, I had one. But people are like, how come you don't have ATVs allowed to your downtown? Because you got to know what you are. You got to find out what you are and totally maximize it. You got to find a niche. You got to find something special. If you look at St. Andrews, it's really hard when you get in a branding proposition what we are, because there's so many different offerings. But one thing that we are is we do embrace tourism. We don't have it all figured out by any means, but everybody really comes to life. And probably the biggest thing that really drives traffic in our community, and we're going to feel it with Paddlefest, is we have a pile of events that happen all year that are really exciting. So you have repeat people that continue to come to your community. And the best part about it is residents can get involved. It makes our way of life better too. Some of the events we have, if it wasn't for visitors, the community wouldn't have them, right? So it's just a way of life. And I by all means, I don't think I'd give any advice to any other community, but find what makes you special and don't be afraid to talk about it. It's kind of, a lot of people want to be modest. Don't be modest. Be proud and be loud about what your community is and what it can offer. This is
going to be my first full summer in St. Andrews, so I'm excited to see what it looks like during
You're
the summer.
hooked now. We got you forever.
Oh, I'm never leaving. Yeah. That's for sure. Thanks for joining me today, Ben.
Appreciate the time.
My guest today has been the mayor of the town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. I'm Natalie Sturgeon, and thanks for watching Your Town Matters.